Hello everyone, my name is Scott Corcoran. I work here at the History Museum of Mobile. I hope everyone is staying safe, practicing self-distancing, and as part of that we want to bring our museum to you. So today we're going to be going through our exhibits at Colonial Fort Conde and talking to you about Mobile before it was part of the United States. Now, Mobile was founded by the French in 1702. Which means it was under control of the King of France. But y'all, the King of France was a busy dude, okay? He was busy always going to war with the English, and he was busy eating cake. So he couldn't be here to see what was going on in Mobile. So he appointed someone to oversee the settlements, a man named Pierre Lemoyne d'Iberville. If you've heard of D'Iberville, Mississippi, they didn't pull that name out of a hat. It's named after him. But even being in charge of the settlements, he couldn't be here all the time. He had to go to France, tell the king what was going on, try to get supplies, try to get other settlers, and find other settlements. So when he was gone, he left his little brother, Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne de Bienville, in charge. Heard of Bienville Square? Well, it's named after him. Now, d'Iberville didn't choose Bienville just because Bienville was his little brother. Bienville had some very specific skill sets that were important to the settlement. He was a diplomat and a linguist. A diplomat, somebody who knows how to talk to other cultures, other communities, build good relationships. And a linguist is somebody who knows or can learn lots of different languages. Now, the reason that was important, the French didn't come to Mobile because they thought the place looked cool. They came here because there was stuff they could get, send back to France to sell and make money. And the main thing they were after here were deer skins. They would tan the deer skins into a very fine leather, and French folks would just empty their wallets for this deer skin leather. Well, Native Americans had a long established history and some very specialized skills when it came to deer hunting. So Bienville was able to use his skills as a linguist to learn their language and his skills as a diplomat to be able to build good trading relationships with them. Y'all, he was so dedicated to this that we're not 100% sure those are the exact tattoos Bienville had. But there are many documents saying that Bienville's body was permanently decorated, tattooed, with Native American symbols, and we think that's a pretty good guess as to what they would look like. He would dress in their attire, canoe up to their villages, and engage in trade discussions. So because of these relationships, Mobile wasn't always where Mobile is today. Originally, the French set the settlement 27 miles up the Mobile River at a place we very creatively call 27-Mile Bluff. Now, the reason they did that was to be closer to the Native American villages Bienville traded with. But y'all, the problem is the Mobile River floods every year. We get a lot of rain in the late winter, the spring and the summer and the fall, but during the late winter, that rain mixes with some of the snowmelt coming in from the mountains and expands the Mobile River. The flooding was so bad that in 1707, 1710, 1711, the flooding actually inundated their settlement. So, 1711, after that third flood year, they decided to move the settlement to the mouth of the Mobile River. By putting the settlement at the mouth of the Mobile River, the river was still going to flood. It's what the river does every year. But at the mouth of the river, most of the flood water empties straight into the bay, meaning the land here is much more stable. So they put everything on boats, moved them down the river, and put the settlement. Basically, where downtown Mobile is today, is where they moved the settlement. But this exact spot where we're standing right now was where they started building Fort Conde in 1723. Okay. So Mobile, at its new location, started doing so well that in 1723 they decided to build a permanent brick and mortar fort to defend the settlement, Fort Conde. Now, to build a brick and mortar fort, you need two things. Y'all want to take a guess as to what they are? That's right, bricks and mortar, okay? So to make bricks, you need mud. Now, the best type of mud that makes bricks is clay. The very best kind of clay that makes bricks is red clay. And the very best kind of red clay that makes the very best bricks is called Alabama red clay. Guess what we have a lot of around here? So, they had everything they need to make the bricks. Now, to make mortar, you need cement. To make cement, you need lime. Now, there's a resource we have in abundance around here that is composed almost entirely of lime, and it's not limestone. It's oyster shells. Oyster shells are composed almost entirely of lime. So they would crush up the oyster shells, heat them up to release the lime, then do other kinds of chemistry. Sorry, y'all, I'm not exactly that kind of nerd. And so they would come up with cement to make mortar. Everything they needed to build the fort was in abundance here. There was just one problem with Mobile at this location. Remember, they were bringing in ships, sending them back to France loaded with supplies. But y'all, the type of vessels that can travel across the Atlantic Ocean are great big vessels. And boats don't just sit on the top of the water, okay? They sink down into the water until they start floating. The bigger the ship, the deeper the water needs to be for the ship to sail. But here's our problem. Mobile Bay is not very deep. It's a very shallow bay. And at the time, there was one kind of difficult to navigate channel. So, luckily for us, just south of Mobile Bay, there's a strip of land that sits on the deep water of the Gulf of Mexico. Anybody want to take a guess as to what that is? That's right, Dolphin Island. But Dolphin Island's not what they always called it. It originally had a different name. Now, lots of different theories for this. I'm going to tell you the one that makes the most sense to me. When you live on a barrier island, the type of island Dolphin Island is, means your groundwater is very shallow. The water you get when you dig a well, what that means is it's real easy to dig a well, but what else it means is that when people die, you can't bury your dead folks in the ground because you're burying them down in the groundwater that you drink, and y'all, that's just nasty. So what the Native Americans did at the far east end of the island, they built a burial mound where they would bury people above the ground. Well, when the French arrived, they saw this burial mound, but the burial mound, it's believed, had been disturbed by a hurricane the year before. So when they came, saw this pile of exposed bodies, they thought some awful disaster had befallen those people, so they called the place Massacre Island. But y'all, here's the problem, okay? You're trying to build a new settlement, encouraging people to move to it, telling everybody, come move to beautiful sunny Mobile. We're going to drop you off on Massacre Island. It doesn't look real good on your tourism brochures. So what they decided to do was change the name of the island, name it after the grandson of the King of France, or his title, the Dauphin. So, on Dolphin Island, they built a trade port. And the big ships coming in from France with supplies or settlers would come into the trade harbor, unload their goods, and then they would send them up Mobile Bay on shallow bottom barges, unload the supplies, load back on the Native American trade goods, send them back down to Dolphin Island, load them on the ships headed back for France. So, with the Native American fur trade, Dolphin Island and Fort Conde, Mobile had everything it needed. So, because of the trade needs, as they were building Fort Conde, they needed to build a big long pier that went out into the river. Remember, I told you earlier that even though the land was much more stable at the mouth of the river still flooded. And you can see that with this river marsh here. Remember this, that river marsh is going to come back to play in a little bit. So as they were building the pier, they needed to build it way out into the river to accommodate the river marsh floodplain. Now, they called this pier King's Wharf. And the reason they called it King's Wharf is the king put an accountant on there. And whether things were coming in or going out, the accountant kept track of it, charged a tax, so the king got paid. Now, when they made this pier, they made it out of cypress wood. And the reason they chose cypress is unique in that it doesn't decay in water. Cypress holds up so well, almost 300 years later, this is one of the original timbers from the original King's Wharf. Now, sounds kind of neat. We have an almost 300-year-old piece of wood that still looks that much like a piece of wood. Well, it's not. And I'm going to tell you why it's not. Because this isn't the only piece of cypress from the original King's Wharf we have. Back storage area, I have about a ton of the original posts, original planks from the original King's Wharf. This is just the best looking one. And I know we have a ton because a few summers ago we switched warehousing units and I was the guy that made carry it. So with Fort Conde and King's Wharf, the French had everything they need, and it served the French well until 1763. So, 1763, the French lost a war with the British. Does anybody know what war the French and the British were fighting that ended in 1763? That's right, the French and Indian War, or as part of the larger global war, the 7 Years' War. Well, the British won. And since the British won in North America, they demanded all French territory east of the Mississippi River. Well, Mobile sits east of the Mississippi River, so 1763, Mobile becomes a British settlement. British wanted Mobile, same reason the French wanted Mobile, to make money. The British just didn't want to have a settlement whose primary feature was a big old fort that had a French name on it, like Conde. So they changed the name of Fort Conde to Fort Charlotte, naming it after the Queen of England, Queen Charlotte. Now, this brings us to one of the most important lessons of the day. When you're grown, you have jobs, you want promotions, you want raises. If you want to do well at that job, if the opportunity presents itself, name something after your boss, okay? It'll help you out. And so the British, they named the fort after the Queen, figuring, oh, that's that place that has the fort named after me. We're going to take good care of that. And that worked out well for the British for the next 17 years. So, I said the British held on to Mobile for the next 17 years. Well, in 1780, the British were involved in yet another war. Anybody know what war the British were involved in 1780? The American Revolution, that's right. American Revolution, 13 original colonies wanted to break away, form their own country. The British didn't want that to happen. Now, there's a reason there were 13 original colonies and not 14. Now, I'm not going to ask anybody to list off all 13 original colonies, but can y'all tell me, was British West Florida one of the original 13 colonies? That's right, it wasn't. Because when 13 original colonies broke away, formed the Continental Congress, they sent representatives to British West Florida, the colony Mobile was part of. And those representatives went to representatives from the British West Florida and said, hey, we are mad at the British. We don't want to be British anymore. We're going to break away, form our own country. Do you want to come with us? And British West Florida said, no thanks. We're good. We like being British. So as a result, Mobile, British West Florida, during the American Revolution, remained loyal to the British. British soldiers out of Mobile, some of them were sent to the 13 colonies to fight alongside the British, you know, the dastardly redcoats, to keep the colonies from breaking away. And because there was so much anti-British sentiment going on in the 13 original colonies, British loyalists wanted to find a place that they felt safe and protected. Well, Mobile, remaining loyal to the British, was a safe haven for British loyalists. So they flooded into Mobile to take advantage of kindness to British loyalists in Mobile. But as a result, remember I said they pulled Mobile soldiers out of Mobile to fight alongside the colonies. Problem is, they took so many soldiers, they didn't leave enough behind to adequately run the defenses. So the Spanish, who were based in New Orleans, said, I've got an idea. They loaded up several warships with 2,100 soldiers and unloaded them outside the fort. And the Spanish soldiers started opening fire on the fort. The British didn't have enough soldiers to run the defenses properly, so after 3 days, the Spanish were able to blow a hole in the side of the fort, take control of the fort, thereby taking control of Mobile. So 1780, Mobile becomes a Spanish settlement. The Spanish wanted Mobile, same reason the British wanted Mobile, same reason the French wanted Mobile, to make money. The Spanish just didn't want to have a settlement whose primary feature was a big old fort with an English name on it like Charlotte. So the Spanish changed the name of Fort Charlotte to Fort Carlotta, which is Spanish for Charlotte, because I guess after taking Mobile, the Spanish felt they didn't need to do anything more to impress their boss. So 1780, Mobile becomes a Spanish settlement. Okay, so after the American Revolution, all the British territory now becomes the United States. And since the Spanish helped the United States fight in the American Revolution, the United States said to the Spanish, hey, thanks for your help. Do you want Florida back? And for some reason, the Spanish said, yeah, we want Florida back. So, United States, Spanish Florida. Now, this border had never really been a big deal. When this was British, this was Spanish, this was French, nobody was really pushing too far inward to make worrying about this border a priority. And then when all this becomes British, there is no border to worry about at all. Well, when this becomes the United States and this becomes Spanish Florida, this border becomes a big deal. So, after some treaties and negotiations, they determined that the 31st line of latitude would be the dividing line between the United States and Spanish Florida. Now, does anybody know where the 31st line of latitude is? Yeah, neither did they. But we can pull out our phones and say, hey Google, or hey Siri, if you're into that kind of thing, take me to the 31st line of latitude. And your phone will say, all right, turn right, start walking, keep walking, and stop, you're there. Well, 200 years ago, they didn't have that. What they had were surveyors. These are people who know how to look at the stars, look at the sun, measure the length and angle of shadows, math, and figure out where they are on the earth as a result. Now, one of the most famous surveyors of the time was a man named Andrew Ellicott. He helped with the laying out and designing of Washington, D.C. So, the United States hired him to chart this 31st line of latitude. And he walked that boundary between Mississippi River and the Atlantic Ocean. And every 5 miles, he'd put a marker in place saying, this is 31st line of latitude. All of this, United States. All of this, Spanish Florida. Well, when he comes to one location, he finds a piece of granite kind of near where he was looking to, or near the 31st line of latitude. So he used that as the marker. Of all the markers Andrew Ellicott put in place, this stone one I just mentioned is the only one that's still in its original location. And it's not too far from Mobile. It's just north of Satsuma, right around Axis. You drive up Highway 43 north, and when you pass Satsuma, you'll see a road sign, Ellicott Stone, and it'll point you into the woods. It is not a trap, okay? You walk about 50 yards into the woods, you'll come across a weird-looking rock surrounded by a fence. That is the last remaining Ellicott Stone in its original location. So when everything returns to normal, you're looking for a fun little Saturday adventure, depending upon what your definition of fun is. It's a neat little trip to go see. So the British and the United States continue to kind of argue over this border, especially since United States farmers would kind of go down into Spanish territory to set up settlements. But by and large, this boundary was agreed to until 1813, when the British were involved in another war. Anybody know what war the British were involved in 1813? Kind of a trick question. It's the War of 1812, because the War of 1812 sounds a lot better than the War of 1812 through 1815. Now, the British were coming to try to take back the United States. The United States didn't want that to happen. The British figured one of the best strategic places of attack was New Orleans. You control New Orleans, you control the Mississippi River, and you can control Mississippi River trade. Well, the United States wanted to stop them. And they figured the best strategy was to launch attacks on the British out of Mobile, headed towards New Orleans. But the United States didn't control Mobile, the Spanish did. So the United States went to the Spanish and said, hey, the British are coming back, they're trying to take back our country, we need to stop them and we need Mobile to do it. Can we have it? Spanish said, no, you can't have it. We're making too much money in Mobile, especially money charging American farmers along the Mobile River system a tax if they want to use Mobile Bay to ship their goods out into the Gulf of Mexico. So the United States came back and said, we really need Mobile. Spanish said, I told you you can't have it. So the United States loads up a few warships, several hundred soldiers, unloads them outside of Fort Carlisle. U.S. General James Wilkinson marches up King's Wharf, knocks on the door of the fort and says, I told you we wanted Mobile. So the Spanish get up on the walls of the fort, start counting all the U.S. soldiers General Wilkinson had with him. They turn around, they count the Spanish soldiers they have garrisoned in the fort. Spanish walk back down, march up to General Wilkinson and say, you can have it. So 1813, Mobile's annexed into the United States without firing a shot. 1819 becomes one of the first cities in the brand new state of Alabama. Now y'all, at this point, after treaties and land purchases and land trades, the United States ends up controlling everything from the tip of Florida over to the Texas-Louisiana border. The United States doesn't need a fort in the middle of their territory at the end of a river, especially one that's kind of run down and aged as Fort Conde was. And I'm going to start calling it Fort Conde again at this point. So, now, what the United States did need, though, was money. The War of 1812 was hugely expensive, so they decided to sell off land holdings they didn't need anymore to generate revenue, and this includes the land Fort Conde sat on. Now, the walls of the fort, the thick brick walls, enclosed 2 acres of land. But then when you factor in the dry moat, the palisades, all the defenses, Fort Conde sat on 11 acres of land. And that's a lot of land to build houses and shops and hotels and restaurants and waterfront piers and warehouses. But to the guys who bought it, 11 acres wasn't enough. So as a result, and the term land developer has never been more aptly applied, what they did to build all the houses, shops, and hotels and restaurants, they had to knock the fort out of the way. Well, that's a thick brick wall enclosing 2 acres of land. And they had to get rid of all that to free up the land to build all those things. So what they did, remember me showing you the river marsh from earlier that King's Wharf went over? Well, they took all the bricks and rubble from destroying the fort and threw it into the river marsh and jetties. And as the Mobile River ran over these jetties, the jetties collected up the dirt, the silt, the sediment rolling through the river, and eventually built up 5 acres of new land. For those of you from Mobile, if you've ever driven down Government towards Water Street, you notice how after Royal it kind of dips down. That's your original riverbank. But y'all, I'm here to tell you there's a reason Water Street's called Water Street. 200 years ago, it was part of the Mobile River. Whenever we get a good hurricane, it becomes part of the Mobile River once again. But everybody, I want to thank y'all for taking the time to watch this video, to learn a little bit more about the museum and allowing us to help you out while you're isolating and social distancing. I want to thank you so much for everything you're doing, and we look forward to seeing everybody back here at Fort Conde when we're on the other side of this crisis. Thank y'all very much.